Hey folks, welcome back to part 2 with Mez McConnell of 20schemes.com. Check out that website. Listen, I just wanted us to go a bit deeper, have a bit more time, having heard his story in part 1. And folks, just a heads up, Mez and I, we're going to talk for about half an hour now, and then I'm going to include this. The first time I came across Mez was this Acts 29 talk that he gave 7 years ago, and it's called What's the Problem with Church in the UK? And it's absolutely brilliant. So it's pure gold. So I want us to get that as well. It's about half an hour of him talking now, answering some of my questions, and then it'll literally be just cutting to a talk, which I strongly recommend you hang around for. So that'll be about an hour in total. All right. Just to explore what it looks like to be effective, you know, if most of the, talking particularly to the UK church, but I think it's the Western church in general, it tends to be middle class, working in areas of where the biggest challenge is just comfort, isn't it? The idol of comfort in our age, everything to make our lives more easy. And actually, I think we all recognise that there's an inconsistency there with what the gospel is meant to be, which is the lost, the least. It's for everyone, but you know, getting our hands dirty, getting really stuck in. And speaking from my perspective, Mez, I want us to do it more effectively around the corner here on our estate. So. When you've shown up, when you've planted churches in it, what are the sort of basic sort of DNA you're seeking to inculcate there?
I mean, that's a big question, isn't it? Listen, the primary thing we want to get right is the gospel, right? That might seem like a ridiculously obvious thing to say, but there's a lot of people, let's just say in the West, in the Western churches in general, if we think about this whole short-term missions movement stuff, you know, people want to come on mission teams. I mean, I've taken mission teams in Brazil and on this, you know, in the slums. I've taken them. We take them every year in the schemes, in our various schemes, and very early on, people coming from good churches, evangelical churches, shall we say, Bible-believing churches. And they were coming to, you know, let's share the love of Jesus. And then we began to notice that a lot of them didn't understand the gospel. Or they used the term, but they weren't using it, I don't think, in the way that the Bible uses it and that we understand it, right? So there was, you know, they would talk about the love of God, they would talk about the love of Christ, but there'd be no mention of the sinful condition of the human race or any thought of eternal judgment or hell, or properly be able to explain the need for repentance and faith. And a lot of it was just very soft. What do people used to call it? Low-key gospel. That drives me nuts. And it just wasn't itching. It just wasn't itching. It just wasn't scratching where our people are itching. I think part of the problem as well is that middle-class Christians in the West particularly can feel guilty. You think you said something earlier on about you feel guilty about privilege or whatever. I'm careful with that term; it's loaded. And one of the ways they try and appease that guilt and try and bridge the gap between our communities and the church is through social action in various guises, right? Lots of good stuff, by the way. You know, kids' holiday clubs once a year, breakfast clubs, school breakfast clubs, food banks, you know, clothes drives, these sorts of things that they feel bad for what they have. These people don't have anything. They've no real connection to their lives. So the bridge they build is all stuff and almost a client, you know, whatever relationship. And part of that guilt as well is they don't want to come in too harsh with the gospel. So we'll just let's not mention judgment and hell too much. Just talk about love. Let's talk about this. Let's try and build a relationship. Let's earn the right to speak. Another phrase which I want to strangle people with when I hear it. And So inadvertently, they come into our communities and they do more harm than good, and they're motivated well. People often say, you can't question someone's motivation. I'm not questioning anybody's motivation, but we can love people with all of our heart and still hurt them unintentionally. I see this with mothers and drug addicts all the time. And so we want to be very clear when people are coming in that they understand the gospel. The number one apologetic question in our communities is hell real? By far, smokes any other question. Wow. We're not a middle-class community. That is never happening. If you did that same, what's my culture, my middle-class culture question they're asking, they're not asking any of those questions. If they are, it would be a small minority, right? We're talking life and death. Nidri, the survey done Nidri 10 years ago, and the average lifespan of a man in Nidri at that point was 47. Oh. And I don't remember in my last 10 years of ministry burying anybody over 40. And we buried lots of babies and children. And so death and judgment, and they are massive questions to us. And what we would find is maybe students would come in for a week and do a placement, and they'd have their apologetics all worked out. And that's good, by the way. And I would just, I wrote about one of my books as an illustration. I remember sitting a couple of students down and said, talk to this guy. His missus just died last year, and OD, ask them your question. Is she in hell? She didn't believe in Jesus. I don't believe in Jesus. Is she in hell? Am I going to hell? And I just watched them all flounder, because that is a brutal question.
Yeah.
And obviously there's nuance to the answer. But my point is they weren't anywhere prepared to speak the gospel. And obviously the answer is we don't know. But it's what we know about God, and then we can talk about love and stuff, but there is judgment. And so we've, in the last 7-8 years, particularly with visiting mission teams now, we say we want, if they apply to us, we'd say we want your testimony, and we want you, in part of that testimony, to give us an explanation of the gospel, which we never used to have to do. We just took it as a given. Yeah. And so, do you understand the gospel? Is before I've got a heart for the poor? Lovely. Do you understand the gospel? Where are people going if they die outside of the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ? Is hell real or not? Because if hell's not real, then leave us alone, mate. If everyone's going to be okay, then just leave us alone. But if hell's real and there's a problem, then what's the answer to that? We need to know what that answer is. It's important because it's a big question. And it does freak people out. Often visitors come in and go, you're very, very aggressive. And it used to confuse me. And I'm like, are we? But then, probably because my girls say I frown a lot, but I'm just concentrating. But we're very, very direct. And if you've done cross-cultural ministry, so you understand this, and if you're coming into our culture, just because we speak the same language and can communicate, we are worlds apart. And so that needs to be taken, what looks harsh to the outsider is actually loving concern to us, because we don't want you to be confused about this. We love you so much. We want to, it's not we're not sitting around just talking about hell all day, don't get me wrong. But if you ask us that straight question, we love you enough to tell you that a straight answer. That's a long answer, and I can't remember the question you asked me, and it's probably irrelevant.
Well, it's all helpful. What would be the second most asked question?
Second, that's a good question. Top three are usually hell. Do you believe in the spirits, the spirit world, demons and stuff? And then usually it would be something around the issue of, isn't the church for middle class people? Or it certainly would be around, the church isn't for people like us, is it?
Right.
And that would have been a big issue for me. I'd be like, guys like me don't go to church. And then you would go into a church and not see guys like you, and that would just go, see? And so a big thing that we fought in the early years was, at least I did when I first came to faith with my family and my non-Christian friends, was that I was a traitor to my class. And I was going to the other side. I always describe it a bit like the Muslim converts. Particularly in Muslim majority culture, if you become a Christian, you're walking away from family, from community, from a bit like the first century Christians, right? If you were a first century Jew, you lost all your business, your family met you. I mean, you were dead to them. And it's the same in our culture. If you come to faith in Christ and start going to church, then you think you're better than everybody else. You're going to you join up with the posh people. And so one of my challenges to the middle class church is, if you're going to come into a community like ours and give the gospel and call people to repentance and faith, you better have something for them more than a couple of midweek meetings. They need to come into a new family, new structures that's comprehensive, that's going to replace a lot of what they're about to lose. And I think that modern Western church is still nowhere on discipleship. And you'll know that from African culture. They do it naturally, right?
Yeah. So if you were, and maybe you do this as a church consultancy, do you come in and people say, look, we want to do it better? You evaluate them and say, what are the top 5 things that you're doing royally wrong, or what are the top 5 things that aren't being...
Maybe I should do some consultancy. I don't know if I get paid though, but they all want their money back. Look, I've been to a few churches over the years. I'll pick one. It generally goes along the same sort of ground. So generally, let's just say it's a nice middle class church. And I'm not using the term pejoratively here. Let's just be very clear about that, because everybody thinks I hate middle class people. I married a middle class woman. I've got middle class kids who get upset when I say, tea time instead of dinner and stuff like that. It's not pejorative, but you understand what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
I'll go, middle class church, maybe what's happened is they've got a building. It sort of skirts, maybe there's a middle class sort of housing around it, but then maybe across the road or so there's an estate or two. Usually churches find themselves, many churches, at least the inner cities do, and usually nice healthy number, middle class guys come, maybe the odd person or kid from the estate comes to the Sunday school through some of the ministries they do there. And I got called to this particular church, and they said, look, we're really struggling. We're here. We've got 200 members. We're doing well financially. We've got a heart for this estate. We run a kids club, holiday club in the summer every year, blah, 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 the usual. We want to try and do more in that community. We're just not reaching them. What do you suggest we do? And my first suggestion is, does anybody in the church live on that estate? Maybe, let's just say there's 2 families on that estate. There's a couple of families. Okay. Have you made a call to the church to challenge people to go and maybe move into the estate and maybe try and form a small core group and work towards maybe planning a church or doing something? No, we've done that. No one's in, didn't seem to be much interest. There's a lot of goodwill for the estate and people want to pray for it. And I'm like, okay. And I remember this group of elders, maybe 6 or 7 men. I said, okay, so why don't you move in then? All of you. And then they laughed together. I'm sitting there looking at them all because I know the answer. And I'm like, why are you laughing? And they're like, well, when pastor goes, my wife absolutely, the guy's mind would kill me. I'm walking around the room. I said, well, there's your problem then, boys. Because if you're not willing to do it and you're not willing to sacrifice it, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. What you're saying to your church, we should be first over the block. We should be, it's not World War One where we're all sat behind enemy lines having a cup of tea 12 miles from the action, sending the troops over. You want to motivate your people? Sell all you have and go and live in there, rent a house in there or whatever. And the meeting ended very quickly after that. People don't want to hear it though. I don't have I haven't written a book on like, this is how you do it. You move in, you want to go and reach the people in Burundi. You wouldn't move to the next African country to it, would you? These are basic missiological principles. You want to reach your people? Go in and live among them, learn their culture. That's what all my planters do. There's no secret to it. We believe in the power of the gospel. It's the gospel that transforms. I've got nothing else to say about that. But no methods. Don't do it in a working class way. I preach the power is in the gospel, God's gospel. And then we disciple people. We love them. In our culture, they come and live. I've got a house. I've got 5 lunatics living upstairs in my house. 2 of them have just recently come to faith. The other 3 came to faith just before that. We've had people living in our house, all our ministry. From our backgrounds, we do pretty heavy, full-on, 24/7 discipleship. That's about the only difference, I would say, that we do. But it's still discipleship. It's nothing sexy. It's the basic stuff. But I don't know what the middle-class church wants to hear when they say, what do we do? And I say, this. And then they smile and go, no.
It's too costly.
It's not costly at all, is it? It's not I'm saying move into flipping a war-torn region, move into a favela in Brazil where we lived. Are there social problems? Of course there are social problems. Of course there's crime problems. But middle-class girls are getting high on coke and getting knocked up when they're teenagers too. I mean, it's it's not that different.
Can you talk into doing this as family? And so you had your girls who are now adults, but that clearly they were raised in it. And what does that look like in terms of, obviously you can't fake it. You're living with them, but the fears, people would be very scared of that.
Yeah, I'm not saying you have to do that. I remember in Nidri, my previous church, I used to say to people, look, some people live out with the estate. I mean, we had like, for instance, a couple of coppers who were members of our church, and they were like, oh, we feel like we should move out. I said, well, I think we shouldn't. And here's why I think you shouldn't. Not for your safety, because I'm not really bothered about you, but if you're out on a shift and people know your coppers and your missus are at home with the kids and that, and a brick goes through your window, it's just not fair. So, that there are exceptions to this stuff. And I used to say, you can. They serve brilliantly elsewhere, and this particular kind of discipling hospitality, like there was like 4 or 5 of us involved in it. Do it. It's a particular gift set, so we don't guilt trip and people and say, unless you do it this way, you're not doing it. Sometimes these guys need a grandma and a granddad. Sometimes, they need outside friends, and sometimes they need that full-time care that being with a family brings. At Nidri, we bought several houses in the community and put guys in community houses. As an aside, you didn't ask this question, but just as an interesting aside, I'm just about finishing my PhD on addiction and pastoral ministry. And this isn't scientific evidence, but just my 30 years in the game is I've found more recently that addicts who come through rehabilitation programs tend to do well. Once they get past the first hump, let's say they do 12 months, they come out almost immediately back into their own culture and family and social circle and back on the kit, the large 95% of the time. However, we found that if we put these guys, even if they're back in the same type of community, in a Christian home around Christians, their return to their old habit drops massively. And the factor seems to just be being around a normal, everyday family. We do quiet time at my, we've got a 6-year-old son we adopted, and we sit together for a meal, and every night we all share something like, what's the best part of your day? Then we do that. And then we're going through a little indescribable book for children, like talking about the stars and God. And Nico was away, my boy, playing football somewhere. And I've got, like I said, 5 adults upstairs, ranging from mid-30s to mid-40s. And we all sat down. I said, oh, Nico's away. And then they demanded I get the indescribable book out, which was for children, so 5 to whatever year olds, and they're buzzing. Like, no, do the thing, because I want to know the amazing fact and how God did this. And so I said to him afterwards, it shows you, right? Even me, it's surprising me in the game. So I'm thinking, they loved it. Simple thing. We read a psalm. It said, made a bit of an explanation about something to do with some solar system thing. And they were buzzing. They loved it. And they said, this is the one thing. One of them said, it's the one thing I look forward to in my day every day. It's my best bit, and hearing what this thing says about the Bible. And, comes from one of the biggest drug dealing families. I've known him for 20 years, this kid. Just came to faith 3 months ago. Already in the house, he's just loving life, praying, just, just that. You can't write a book about that. That's just doing ordinary life and driving to the shops and say, come on, boys, come with me, or let's do this. So yeah, I don't know how I sell that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, so discipleship, we have courses on discipleship, but you would describe discipleship as just literally living.
Yeah. I don't understand courses on discipleship. I don't understand courses on evangelism either. I find it quite amusing. Tell people about Jesus and trust the gospel, thanks very much. And then when they get saved, teach them the Bible and show and model to them what Christian living looks like. Yeah, that'd be the shortest book ever. I should write that book. I honestly, and I'm not being, people think I'm being facetious, and I'm really not. If you love the Lord Jesus and you're growing in your faith, and then you can disciple anybody. And even if you don't know the answers, you'll know someone who does. It's so simple. That's why I get frustrated about why isn't the church doing it, and why isn't it doing it in our communities.
In between, after part 1, we talked about only 5 churches in England support you. I mean, that just, bear in mind, surely we want to support fruitful stuff, and yours is clearly fruitful. Come on, why do you think people aren't supporting you?
Because I'm a pain in the backside. And I'm not saying I'm a minor prophet, but if I am, I'm a minor one. But I love the minor prophets. But I bet you they guys weren't often invited to church barbecues, because they were constantly the social conscience. I spoke at a conference in Liverpool a couple of months back on J.C. Ryle's ministry, the young men, he was a pain in the neck, which is why he got shoved into Liverpool. They just gave him that bishopric because he was a pain in the neck, and it really transformed his thinking about these sorts of things. But I said at this conference, listen, you're as probably sick of me talking about this subject as I am of talking about it, but I just feel this is what the Lord's called me to talk about, and I'm just going to keep talking about it, and then I'll die, and then hopefully someone will pick it up. But yeah, I mean, no one wanted to hear the minor prophets, did they?
No.
I mean, no one wanted to hear about righteousness and justice and Isaiah and Jeremiah and And yet God constantly had to call people back to it. And yet time and again, the prophets are just blasted or ignored. So I'm the guy with the chip on the shoulder. That's fine. I'm the guy who hates mercy ministry, apparently, which is quite hilarious. I hate mercy ministry because it's done badly. I want mercy ministry to be done better in UK churches. Yeah, and it's just, I think it's an embarrassment to the UK church. I read a thing years ago. Are you an Anglican dude?
Very loosely.
All right. There was an Anglican dude years ago, bishop, said something about poor people, maybe 10 years ago, about this stuff. We need more churches in, blah, blah, blah. Man, they fated him like he was a prophet. And we were laughing, friends, about it. And we've been saying this for 15 years, but I'm an angry man with a chip on my shoulder, which is true. But I think I'm angry about the right things.
Righteous anger. And you get a prophet in his hometown on one level geographically, because you are getting support from America, but not the UK.
You know, I love Americans because they're can-do, aren't they? They're like, yeah, man, let's go for it, bro. But here it's like, it'll never work. It's blah, blah, blah.
And yet it is working. Folks, you're listening, it is working, and this is worth backing. It's worth getting involved. Back to the cost and family. So, you know, I'm in Burundi sometimes, for example, there's burning barricades, there's gunfire, and I'm like, well, we are not leaving because we've become Burundian. This is our patch. Jesus didn't leave when things get tough. Your reality is very different, but it must have, you know, we had to count the cost. Is my wife going to get raped? Are the kids going to be traumatized? Blah, blah, blah. How real has been that cost?
We had in Brazil particularly as well. I mean, you know, with the street gangs, we took the girls out on the streets with us in the car, and all the street kids knew them by name in the end. And my girls have always lived with guests in our house, and in ministry. I mean, Scotland was fine. Wasn't like Brazil. That was wild. We had some interesting characters in our house, but it was always safe. It wasn't like we met some random guy in the street and said, "Come home and live at my house." We had a structure of how things work. So by the time they came to live in someone's house, they'd been through our vetting process, if you like. You know, they've been at the church, they've been at various meetings. We then had a couple of houses out with the community. They would have stayed there, and if they were doing well and showing good progress, then they would come into one of our houses before we would help them maybe into independent living in one of the flats in the community. So it wasn't just like bam, bam, bam. A couple of times we took people in, but they were recommended through other churches, and they were either not addicted to drugs, didn't have serious mental health issues. But yeah, we were pretty cool. And as the girls got older, you know, there was all sorts of safety things. We would have the girls could have locks on the inside of their doors.
I was going to ask that.
Guys weren't allowed in the same, or girls allowed in the same, like, place where the girls slept in their rooms. There were rules. We weren't stupid. We take precautions, but at the same time, we had a very, very open house system, and still do.
Which books or book would you most want us to read in terms of helpfully engaging?
This is so self-publicizing, isn't it? The Least, the Last, and the Lost. Have you heard of that book?
No.
That's my big work. Least, Last, and Lost: Poverty in the UK and the Responsibility of the Local Church, it's called. It's been out a few years now. It's just produced an American version. I've written a few Church in Hard Places. But Least, Last, Lost is the UK context. Here is, the first half is basically, this is poverty in the UK. This is what it looks like. Here's the statistical research. And the second part is, right, I've said the church sucks. Here's what I think we should do about it. A guy once said to me at a conference, right, you've told us what we're doing wrong, now what should we do? I'm like, so this is that book saying, right, this is how I think we could improve things. And then there's a connection to a website in that book where basically spent 4 years researching poverty in England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and you can go on and look at any town or village or city in the UK and find the stats for poverty. It was 500,000 words in my first draft. That's my life's work. With the book's about 130,000 words, and then there's about 150,000 words of research on the website that you can check out if you care. But yeah, Least Last Lost. Mm-hmm. And then we've written a lot of women's. Sharon Dickens is our women's director. Has written a lot of stuff for women, doing ministry among women in our communities as well. Super, super important.
Good. Hey folks, I'm loving the impact of the podcast and how much joy and encouragement it's bringing. Listen, here's some potential action points if you're enjoying it. The first one is we love feedback. So why don't you tell us where you listen to the podcast and how it's impacted your life by sending us a 1-minute voice note to podcast@greatlakesoutreach.org. We might air a few of those. Another thing you could do is give us a review on Spotify or iTunes. Subscribe there. Also, can you subscribe to our YouTube channel? We're trying to grow our presence there, and actually that is a key way of getting it out there further. Another way is to recruit new sign-ups. So could you think of 3 people you could say, yeah, hey, this podcast, I'm loving it, and I'd love you to engage with it as well. And then lastly, if you want to give to the work, this podcast comes out under the auspices of Great Lakes Outreach. We're working in Burundi, which is currently the second poorest and the hungriest country in the world. The needs are absolutely massive. And what's amazing, and we never did it for this purpose, but the money that's coming in through people like yourselves who are loving it is funding 5 ministries out in Burundi right now. That's impacting thousands upon thousands of lives. So, if you gave 20 quid a month, 20 quid here is like 200 quid out there, or 50 bucks a month, that's like 500 bucks of impact. I just stick a 0 on it in terms of knowing how far money goes out there. So we'd love it. You could do a one-off or a regular monthly support to greatlakesoutreach.org/inspired. That's greatlakesoutreach.org/inspired. And let's spread the love. All right. So 4 potential action points. You could do 1 or all 4. So that's feedback, sending in a voice note to us. You could give us a great review on Spotify or iTunes and subscribe to the YouTube channel. You could recruit others and gossip the podcast and get other signups, or you could give to greatlakesoutreach.org/inspired. I'll put all those links in the show notes below. And now let's get back to the podcast. Right, folks, as I said at the start, we're now going to listen to a talk Mez gave 7 years ago, and it's called What's the Problem with the Church in the UK? All right, take it away, Mez.
So let me let you into a little secret. I'm here talking about the church and class, and I'm not even working class. When I was a lad, working class is what I aspired to be. I wanted to be a miner, or I wanted to work in one of the big mill factories in the northern town where I largely grew up. I wanted to be like the men around me that I saw going out to work every day. But unfortunately, the 80s got there before me. And by the time I grew up, jobs were scarce, and the working men were either down the pub, in the buckies, or scratching around for any menial job to try and put bread on the table. And this is a conference about class and the church. And the only thing I know for sure about class is that I haven't got much of it. Although I live in a nice house, my own house, and that's unbelievable to a lad like me. I've got a nice car on HP, obviously. Don't want to overdo it. My 2 girls, they like Downtown Abbey and correcting my grammar. My wife, and I always say Downtown Abbey because it annoys people who come up to me after and go, you know it's Downton, don't you? Yeah, I do. My wife screws her face up in disgust when I say bog instead of bathroom. I'm having me tea while my girls are eating their dinner. So who knows what class is anymore? I don't. I mean, I could give you a good sociological lecture about its roots in society, but you know what? I don't care, and neither do most of you, right? Let's be clear about that. But we all want to put a label on people and things, and I think we want to do that because we want to have some sort of meaning or find or discover or know our place in society, which I think is behind a lot of these things. In our communities, council estates and housing schemes, the old working class, they're dying out.
You know, the miners, the old miners, the old factory workers, the like, that generation is going. And there's what I call the new working class are rising up in their place, the zero contract guys, the immigrants, the cleaners, the shop assistants. You know, those used to taking orders and living with the fact that there's no promotion incentives where they work unless you want to arise to be the shop manager and get an extra 50 pence an hour. And then you've got the middle class in all their variants, businessmen, doctors, administrators, those used to giving orders, those who cherish dreams of upward mobility and bettering themselves and their lives. And you've got the upper class, usually all Anglicans. And that wasn't in my notes, and that's why I stick to my notes. Who don't necessarily have more money than us. You realize that class is not about money, right? Most of my guys run around the scheme with more pocket change than you guys earn a month, all right, in their pocket. It's not about money, it's about power. And there's a privileged class that's running this country. Left wing, right wing, middle of the road liberals. And then we've got what I call class chameleons. People who are quite happy flitting about between one and the other, somewhere usually between sort of old working and middle class. And we all know that the upper class is closed except to a chosen few. And then right there at the bottom of the pile, as a result of 50 years of the social state, you've got my people. The Neds, that's non-educated delinquents, the Chavs, the underclass, the benefit street dwellers, the cannon fodder for Jeremy Kyle, the lazy, the sponges, the undeserving poor, although things are looking up for us now because apparently some of us have been categorized as deserving, so that's something to aspire to. I'm on a stage in a packed out hall. Some of you are wondering, what is he going to say that's going to be absolutely controversial? And you're waiting for it because you're excited to tweet about it. Half of you are hoping that I'll say something stupid and make a sort of monumental balls up so it can be spread across the blogosphere tomorrow by people who are very offended by my tone and critique. I've got people too hard. If I'm too hard here today, they'll pounce. If I'm too soft, my own people will go after me. If I'm too right-wing, we'll be on it. If I'm too Marxist, if I'm too intersectional, identity politic. Yes, I do know what all those words mean. Here's my point. I want to thank you all for coming today. I want to thank Acts 29, particularly Steve Timmis, who's been a champion for us over many years, for putting it on. Thanks to John Stevens for having the courage to turn up. And for the FIC, who've actually been very helpful to us in the last few years and who are co-sponsoring some of our road shows. But I want to thank most of all the Lord Jesus Christ, without whom I would be dead in my sins. My children would not have been born. I wouldn't be here dead, most likely, like most of my friends that I grew up with. There's 2 of us left alive. Or I'd be probably sitting under a bridge down the road, full of chemicals, and wondering where my life went so wrong. 24 years ago, I was shivering in the cold outside Victoria Station, just 7 miles from this church. It's where I slept at night. I was high, I was hungry, I was scared, I was angry at the world, I was so full of rage, yet I had no clue who I was mad at. Just this vague thing called society. I was paranoid, trying to bat off the sexual advances of male predators who wanted to have sex with me. Within weeks, I'd be doing 15 months in a category A prison, where I got angrier still, forced into terrible acts of violence out of fear and just trying to protect myself. I was always on edge, I was jittery, I was untrusting, I was guarded, I was paranoid. Instead of prison helping me, I just left it angrier than I'd entered it, angry at the world, angry at the system, whatever that was, angry at anybody who I thought had it better than me or easier than me. I'd been abandoned by my mother at 2 years old. I'd been discarded by my alcoholic, gambling-addicted father, tossed into a chaotic care system, forced from my home in Ireland into a children's home in England, passed from foster carer to foster carer, orphanage to orphanage, separated from my only sister, beaten, abused, ignored, and finally spat out by the system onto the street at 16 years old, violent, vengeful, and left to my own devices. And my social workers did me no favors either. I entered adulthood a complete mess. I was a victim. It wasn't my fault. It was my circumstances. It was the Conservative Party's fault. They stole our milk in the 70s and 80s. We never got over it. Imagine the man I could have been if I'd only had milk as a kid. I'd definitely be a foot taller, right? I was angry. I was raging. They killed the miners, they killed the manufacturing industry, they wreaked havoc across the northern working class heartlands that I grew up in. Families devastated, crushed, men crushed in their prime, and I saw it all and I was angry. The church, get a grip of yourself. Christianity, don't make me laugh. That wasn't for the likes of me. That wasn't even a consideration. Never entered my head. Homelessness soon followed, park benches, disused houses, friends' floors, wherever I could get my head down, all blotted out by more and more drugs, dealing, stealing, burglary, violence, whatever it took me to get what I wanted to get through the day, meaningless, monotonous jobs, putting lids on yogurt tops, making nails, making cardboard boxes, laboring, cleaning toilets, hating my life, hating my existence, making bad choice after bad choice. Again, none of it my fault, all of it everybody else's. This is what society's made me. That's what I told myself. No one cares about me, so screw you, screw the world. And then the death of my children sent me spiraling into a dark hole. One that I thought I'll never get out of this. And all of this pressure, all of this pain, feeding my anger, feeding my sense of victimhood. And then one day, I met with Christ in a very violent and uncompromising way. In fact, the book of Romans absolutely brutalized me. God's word forced me to confront my cycle of sin. It forced me to confront my selfish choices, my self-righteousness, my self-absorbed, vicious cycle of sinful rebellion. I hated the book of Romans with all of my heart. If I would have met Paul, I'd have smashed him in the face with a bat. I wanted my social workers back. I wanted the kind old lady at the soup kitchen back who told me, you're not a bad person, Jesus loves you. And yet here was the Bible challenging everything I knew, every justification I'd ever had for every bad, destructive choice over the years. And you know, it was a horrible, painful experience to be crushed by the weight of my own sin. But even though I hated it because I knew it was true. When I was first told that Jesus loved me, I didn't understand it. Not because I had daddy issues, you know what I mean? And all that stuff liberals say about us. I was thinking to myself, what sort of God is that? What sort of God that he just loves you as you are, Mez? Is that right? I didn't even love me as I was. But when I heard that God was angry with me, that he was angry at my sin, that was the most terrible thing I'd ever heard in my life and the most liberating thing. Yes, I was loved, but I was in deep trouble with a God of wrath. And as soon as I heard it, I knew it was true. Deep down, I knew it, but I hated it and I fought it. Who would I be without my excuses? Who would I be without my rage and my anger against the machine? What would I do when there's no one left to blame but myself? And here I was, backed into a spiritual corner, no avenue of excuses left. And eventually, I threw myself on the mercy of Jesus. I confessed my sinful, proud rebellion against a just and holy God. I threw my weight behind the Lord Jesus to save me from myself, but more importantly, from my sin that had separated me from him and the rest of society. Against my wishes, I became a Christian. And overnight, I became a traitor to my people. I became a traitor to my family. I became a traitor to my beliefs, became a traitor to my anger, to my pain. I joined the other side. I was castigated for it. I'd committed the cardinal sin of trying to better myself, they said. Of thinking I was a cut above now, they said. Of trying to get out of the so-called life and culture that has been swallowing me up and killing me for years. How dare I leave the pond? How dare I even think of getting out of my chaotic, abusive, self-destructive life? How dare I do that and force my contemporaries to consider and look at the hard options of their lives? But I'd found Jesus, or at least Jesus had found me. And so I went to a church for the first time in my life. And you know what? I met people there who were kind to me, nice to me, fascinated by me as I by them. But it was very clear from the off we were different. They wore suits and hats and dresses. Not the men. The men wore the suits, women wore the dresses. Although we all know in Christian culture it's the women who wear the suits and the men who wear the dresses. Let's just be clear about that. But anyway, that's not in my notes either. They talked in Old English when they prayed. They taught the Bible like all of it was true. It was a weird thing. They shook my hand at the door. They showed me to my seat. One couple took me in. They let me live with them. I sat at a table and had a meal at 23 years old. Imagine that. I've not done that since my days in care. They welcomed me into their home, but I would sit in my room alone. I wanted to like them. I wanted to love them. I wanted to be part of their family. I wanted to sit around the table and laugh about my day, but I just couldn't. I felt dirty. I felt unworthy. I felt fake. I just wanted to sit in my room alone, fearful, anxious, nurse my anger, scared that they'd find out what I was really like and then reject me as everybody had before. I wanted to be loved so much that I hated myself for being so weak. And so I rejected any form of affection. It's like if I denied it, then I couldn't be hurt if it all went wrong. And soon the pressure became so bad. The more I stayed, the more I liked it. The more I liked it, the more anxious I became. Then I realized one day, man, I am serious about Jesus. And I love being a part of a family that didn't stub cigarettes out on each other, that didn't smash me in the head with a pan because I didn't wash a fork properly, that didn't force me to eat my own feces as a bet to show off to drunken friends. I loved it so much. I needed to get away from it. I needed to run back to the streets, to the cold, to the vomit-strewn doorways, to the fear that at least I understood and can control. And it's madness, I know. But thankfully, Jesus held me fast. A couple of good brothers held me fast. The love of Christian strangers won out over the madness of street culture, the devil, my own sinful desires. And I began to grow in Jesus. I began to get into the Bible. I began to devour the Bible. I began to understand the new surroundings, understand this weird culture that I was now in. And I began to question everything. And that is when my problems really started. You see, in the early days, I was a celebrity, at least in my little church. I was famous. Everybody knew who I was. I was a novelty item. I was a brand plucked from the fire, as somebody once said to me. I don't know what that means. I was a trophy of grace, they called me. That was another one. Don't know what that means either. Soon, I became a man in demand. Everybody wanted to hear my story. Tell us how Jesus saved you, they said. But what they meant was, tell us all the gory, heart-rending details of your past. Recount your time in prison. Tell us your childhood abuse and your homelessness, about your homelessness. And yeah, throw Jesus in. And this lot, the church were an easy crowd to please. And I so wanted to please them. I so wanted to belong to them. I was a willing participant. It gave me meaning. It gave me a special kind of pride. It made me admired in a culture that despised my people at worst and feared them at best. And most important, it made the open doors to the wider church to accept me, or so I thought. I've been a Christian 24 years now, half my life. And the boy I used to be feels so far away. So I often wonder if it's somebody else I'm talking about. And of course, spiritually speaking, it is. I'm a new creation, a new man. I am God's man. I'm not the boy I used to be, but that boy's experiences, overseen by the work of the Holy Spirit, have certainly shaped the man I am today. Now, I don't remember the exact day the celebrity shine started to wear off, for me at least, because there's always a line of Christians wanting to hear a juicy testimony. It didn't happen overnight, It was a gradual thing. First, I began to grow more in my knowledge of the Bible. Then I began to grow more in the knowledge of myself. I began to grow spiritually. Instead of pride in my story, I began to feel shame. I wanted to run from it. I wanted to leave it behind. I didn't want to talk about it anymore. I felt like every testimony I gave kept me in bondage to the sin that I was trying so hard to leave behind. But everybody in the church wanted me to regurgitate it, to celebrate it. They celebrate my pain. Like I don't know why Christians do this. And I began to feel perhaps I should be doing more than just continually telling my horror story for the entertainment of the middle classes. And as I began to try and say, no, I don't want to do that anymore. I just want to grow. I want to be a Christian. I want to move away from that. As I began to move away from my story, the church began to move away from me. Not mean-spirited, you understand? Not overt, subtle. I didn't want to talk about prison and my dead children. I want to talk about the doctrines of grace. Have you heard about the doctrines of grace? They're absolutely chicken oriental. They are mental. And people will be saying, oh, don't want to talk about that. Doctrine kills. You just stick to loving Jesus, son, and you'll be fine. And it wasn't long before I figured out these people weren't helping me. These people were stifling me. They were killing my growth. I'm sure they loved me, but they were wrong. And I'm down to 88 seconds. I'm never going to end, so that time I can do one. And I began to feel like guys were deliberately keeping me down. That the unspoken assumption is guys like me don't become pastors. We don't need to know the Bible deeply. I told myself, you're just being paranoid. But everything I saw matched my thoughts. I never met a pastor from a council estate. I never heard a voice like mine except on a stage giving a testimony to entertain the masses. Conferences were the same. They looked the same. They sounded the same. I brought it up. I was, shh. It's not true. It's your imagination. You're just angry. You've got a chip on your shoulder. So I kept it down. I kept quiet. But I noted the irritation whenever I talked about it. Suddenly, I wasn't a trophy of grace anymore. I was a pain. Suddenly, I had an attitude problem. Suddenly, I'm the lad with a chip on his shoulder. And I'm here on this stage today, despite every single obstacle put in my way by the Christian church. From the time an old man took me aside in the church and said, why are you here? People like you don't come here. What are you after? From the elder that told me, Bible college? Oh, son, that's not for the likes of you, lad. You'll never get through it. You've got to write papers and stuff. Like I was thick. From the college lecturer that told me, listen, son, pastoral ministry isn't for your type. You're too rude. You're too blunt. From the couple at a missions conference that said to me, listen, people from council estates don't become missionaries. Or the other missionaries who took me to a side and said, listen, why don't you just stick to working with street children? They're more your type. From the pastors who told me, guys like you don't plant churches. From the mission board member who told me, stay in Brazil, don't take the gospel back to the UK. Council estates, from the countless Christians who told me not to go to Scotland, from the ministers who told me not to start 20 schemes, from the critics who said to me, that won't work, from the countless grant-giving organizations who've turned me and my people down over the years. 20 years I've been a minister grafting for Jesus. I've never had a penny from a grant-giving organization that I've applied to. In evangelical circles, I can get money for buildings, I can get money for food banks, I can get money for projects, but I can get next to nothing for men and women recruited to plant gospel churches in our toughest communities. From those who sent me emails and told me not to join Acts 29, who told me not to start church in high places, for those who told me not to hold this conference, for those who wanted to hijack the agenda of this conference and take it from us, from those who said they want to partner with us, but in reality, they want to control us. For those who said to me, don't start the ragged school of theology, that won't work. From those who snipe on the sidelines, criticizing our every move, yet offering nothing constructive of their own. Despite all of that, I am here. I am a product of God's sovereign grace and my own bloody mindedness. I have prayed, cried, shouted, fought, studied, sacrificed my health for 2 decades, spent all my energy to get here, so that people from my communities can have a voice in the UK church. So nobody's going to tell me it's all in my imagination or that the system is fair. It isn't. I've had to scrap my way through the church, even to be accepted. And here's my advice to the church, to all of us. We need to look at it all. It all needs to change. Churches, grant-making bodies, denominations, seminaries, youth camps, all of it. People who sit on boards, people, elders of our churches, the decision makers, every individual Christian, all the things we congratulate ourselves on. The worst, most cynical, snobbish, elitist people I've met in my life are evangelical pastors. And there's something sad watching them scrabbling for the scraps from the elitist Christian institutions while cynically mocking and eviscerating anybody who challenges the status quo. We are lying to ourselves in the UK church. The gospel isn't free for all in this country. And if it is, it's not a level playing field when it comes to being discipled, equipped, trained, and sent out for ministry. And if something does happen in our communities, a food bank opens or a children's after-school club, we're supposed to be grateful and thankful for it and just sit down and shut up. And we're not here today because the evangelical church in the UK wants to hear the message we have to bring. We're here today to bring the message the evangelical church doesn't want to hear, despite putting every conceivable obstacle in our way. And if we want to change the church, then we need to want to change. And I'm not sure we do. Not enough of us anyway. Now listen to me. I am not saying I'm 100% right. Maybe some of this is down to childhood trauma and the response of social rejection. I am a little bit angry sometimes, and this is me being polite. I am quite sarcastic sometimes. I am cynical. And you know what? For that I repent. I'm a moron at the best of times. Right? Let's just get that straight. A grade A idiot. Okay? I'll agree to that. Doesn't make me wrong though, does it? Is it really all in my head? Why is it when the poor rise up and do something, when we start a ministry like 20 Schemes, all we get is criticism and cynicism? Why is a ministry like ours seeing converts across Scotland in poor communities, influencing churches around the world? Why are we only supported by 2 churches in Scotland and 2 in the rest of the UK? Is that not strange to you? Well, maybe there's nothing sinister in it. Nothing at all. One of my friends says to me, "Why are you so angry?" I said, "Listen, the problem is I'm not so much angry anymore as just disappointed. Is this all for show today? Or does the UK church really listen to what we want to say and to the solutions that are coming?" You guys are panicking. Give me just 2 minutes, right? I'm saying I'm over time by 290 seconds, but I don't care. This is important and we need to hear it. I may never get another chance after you all get angry and tweet stuff about me. Here's why I'm optimistic. If God can change me, he can change his bride too. That's why I remain hopeful. I want us to get back on track. I've been telling my working class friends for years, listen, hang in. Change will come, and when it does, we'll be ahead of the curve. Not that we're better than middle class people, but that we may have something to teach you about a scenario we spent most of our lives armpit deep in. You understand? I'm not saying we're better than you, we're just saying, listen up. We've got something to say. There's a problem in the UK church. It exists. The systems in place to reach our people are broken. Many parachurch ministries which operate in our communities are fundamentally flawed and problematic. Half the people running and staffing them aren't even saved. Or if they are, they have a faulty understanding of the gospel. Handing someone a bag of goodies for the week is not the gospel. It's a nice thing to do sometimes. Sometimes it's not a nice thing to do. But please, could somebody explain to me and to Ian why churches in the UK are throwing millions at food banks and parachurch organisations and agencies that are quite patently failing to develop leaders and Indigenous Christians in our communities? Why are you throwing millions of that and not a penny at church planting and revitalisation? Why have I got to go on my knees? People say, "Why are you always in America?" So I've got to fly over there to beg for money because you lot in this country won't give us a penny. Now, the first part of my little talk was good because I gave you the entertainment bit. People like the entertainment bit, they don't like the second bit. Here's a book you all need to read, Poverty Safari by Darren McCarvey. Come and see me afterwards. Not a Christian guy. This guy is unbelievable. Listen to his quote. I will end with this. Listen to his quote. He says, in Scotland, poverty is dominated by left-leaning, liberal, middle class. Because the specialist class is so genuinely well-intentioned when it comes to the interests of people in deprived communities, they get a bit confused, upset, and offended when those very poor people start expressing their anger towards them. It never occurs to them, because they see themselves as the good guys, that the people they purport to serve may in fact perceive them as chancers, careerists, or charlatans. They regard themselves as champions of the underclass, and therefore, should any poor folk begin to get their own ideas, or, God forbid, rebel against the poverty experts, the blame is laid at the door of the complainants for misunderstanding what is going on. You hear what I'm saying? You swap all those words for the middle-class church. I'm a fan of soup kitchens. I'm a fan of food banks. I'm a fan of clothing stores. Let me tell you, in their current form, hear it very loud, they are not working. You can put all the Facebook statuses up you want and congratulate yourselves all you want. They are not working. If we want to get serious, then we need to shut them down. But you know what? That'll get laughed out of court. He's nuts, that lad. If you run these things, and I'm not criticizing loving Christians who run these things, you're probably most likely frustrated. Frustrated by church leaders who don't take you seriously, frustrated by the church that doesn't take people who get converted through these ministries in, disciple, equip them, and train them. But I'm telling you, they're not working. They're not working, and we need a complete overhaul of the entire thing. Instead, what am I told? I'm told, shut up, be more constructive. But it's not working. Listen, I'm not going to end with a Braveheart-esque call to arms. This isn't America. It's not the movies where the poor guys come out, triumphant in the end. You know what? Me and Ian walk out arm in arm with John Stevens. That would look funny. I'd just look like his little child, wouldn't I? I just want some recognition. There may be a glitch in the matrix. That's all I want. And then we can go from there. Not complete blank denial. It's all in your head, and you guys have just got an attitude problem. Because I don't think it is. We have got an attitude problem. That's fine. I'm happy about that. Well, I'm not happy about that. But if we want to do something, you've got to listen to what we're saying, please. And maybe we can do something actually constructive together. 572 seconds over time. Unlucky.